my another stream where I'll be again talking about esports gibberish, but this time, as you can see, I'll be somewhat reacting to my predictions from over a month ago from this video. So we're trying to analyze how right I was and how wrong I was in those limited predictions. So you can begin with top lane because this is the first tier list that I made, and I have already opened a query for top lane. I guess I can, let me check in correlation. Maybe I can actually crop it out, just to have a bit of an insight without always looking for this, always switching windows should I say. Aatrox was the highest priority champion, by the way. Sorry. Aatrox actually missed only one game, by the looks of things. I would then need to better calculate, but I would assume. Actually, let me open the calculator just to be rightfully so. Just to be right, and I'm not lying. 25 times multiplied by 0. 94. 123 games. Aatrox missed only 2 games. He was in all 125 games across play-ins and main event, apart from 2 games. And then if we go to the main event, I think it's even worse. Let me check. I think it's even worse. Not much history, but we'll get to that later. Because exactly, he was present in all main stage games. So basically all the games that he missed were coming from play-ins. In the main stage he was perma-picked or banned. Literally. Even I couldn't succumb to the pressure when I was doing 1v1 drafting with my people. On a small server, admittedly. And even if we went through the first phase without any Aatrox ban on pick, eventually we pretty much had to ban Aatrox in the second phase ban because of how humongous his presence was felt. Because of the champion power level. And rightfully I placed him well in the positioning. Let me actually copy the duplicate the card on this page. Just want to keep the overall cumulative champion statistics too. Ornn was actually not that highly prioritized as I thought he would be. So realistically he should have been in the mid-pick ban, to be fair. Renekton, I guess right. He was not always picked, but he was still comfortably picked a lot. Quite a bit. Even in, actually, whoa. Most of his games come from the main stage. I wonder who really played that Renekton. Oh, so many players, and then an abysmal 31.3% win rate over 16 games. It's still, obviously it's not the highest sample size, but it's quite atrocious still, I would say. Only 5 games won. And apparently Genji won 2 of them in their series versus Damokia. Apparently. I mean, not Genji. There were 2 games won within that series. Essentially. And also 369 winning, but that game was a bit sauce. But anyway, I got Renekton right. Gwen, not really. She was very low. She deserves the low pick ban. She wasn't picked that often. I mean, only 6 games and 4 bans, which indicated that she was not a really strong pick. I thought she would be more picked because of Ornn and then the possibility of her countering tank, scaling for free, essentially. Well, apparently no, perhaps the power level was weak. And also the Gwen game from Zeus. I know that people say Zeus, but it was because back then, if I remember correctly, in 2021 when Zeus debuted, there was also another player on KT roster who had a similar name to the pronunciation, Zeus, WZUS. He was a support for KT roster in 2021, and I think that was the origination of this specific pronunciation for Zeus. But now that the player is no longer there, Zeus in SEK, I think people should normally just say Zeus towards the T1 top player. But I guess the pronunciation stuck, and perhaps I should then stick to it, Zeus. Fiora was also pretty sold out. I think rightfully in the... Actually, I haven't really focused that much on the specifics, but I think in my mind it was probably more like 45 to 50% big ban threshold for being high big ban, and to mid being between 25 and 50%, I think. So Fiora is really close to being high. She was really scary, also one of the counters to Aatrox. But also, I think she dropped a bit, because while she was certainly strong, she, as a champion, generally demands so many resources, not only in draft but also in game. And if you draft around her, then it's easier to fulfill her win condition of being a silent threat. Because admittedly, Fiora is not the best team fighter. The Mythic rework from 2021 did serve a little justice in terms of team fighting, because now she can opt for God Drinker, but generally she still doesn't want to go for the item, still she wants to be a split pusher. She's essentially a byproduct of the meta, although some would claim that she's always been strong. You can essentially look, there's pretty much no God Drinker, only Divine Sandra, so it's more of the 1v1 playing power. And then there's also one random Strike Breaker from Brief. Camille also should have, although she's close to mid tier. She was not as popular as Fiora as a counter to Aatrox, as a champion in general, because she really wasn't paid that much into Aatrox in only 3 instances as I'm looking. Okay, 4. I missed some games. But she did win versus Aatrox in those 3 instances of the main event games, and only lost once in play-ins. But it was from Topun from OCE. Actually, it's now LCO in terms of the league name. Not Australia and Oceania, if you want to be a geo-locally precise. Suppose... I don't actually know. But generally, you can say that she did okay into Aatrox. At least she won the games that she was supposed to win. And then she also won versus all that top laners. But there are also other pieces that can always sway the scales of analyzing whether a pick itself was successful into one or not. Needs to be a deeper analysis. I'm trying to only predict. Sejuani, I undervalued her. She should have been easily high priority, swapping with Ornn essentially, because she was essentially picked across all the playing games in 106 games out of 125. And then it's actually 127 games overall. So perhaps, I'm sorry for the miscalculation of this. I thought for some reason I misunderstood it, and I thought that Aatrox was in all 125 games, whereas it was 127 times 0.984, then it equals approximately 25%, 125 in rounding. He still missed 2 games, but undervalued the number of games it was played. Apologies. But again, I undervalued Sejuani We can actually check how many games she was played top lane. She was not big that in top lane, so for top lane she'll be on that threshold, imaginary threshold between mid and high. But I would say it was still... Oh, it was win rates. I'm sorry, I'm not paying some attention for a reason. In that case... Also, she still sold 70 games out of 80 in the main stage. But not many of them were from top lane. Let's check. How many games she was playing? Because she was sold the light of day 30 times. And she was played 90 total times in jungle and 11 in top lane. So overall the champion is high pick ban, but for specifically roles, I would say she was high pick ban for jungle and mid tier for top lane. There was still that flex potential threat that could have been utilized a lot, and then maybe a reason why she was banned also very often. She wasn't the most banned, but she really had a lot of bans. And also I think... Oh, it's Yumi being the highest ban. Fill it out. Yes, it is Yumi with 68 bans. Yumi didn't need to be banned so often, I think. I can explain why soon. Canon also low tier, I think. Or even Shanzi tier? Where is Canon? Maybe a main event will be easier to check, or maybe I'm just blind. I just saw it. Should be a little easier. Canon. 15 games. Yes, low tier. So it's me again thinking that because Ornn will be much more prevalent, then Canon will be a decent answer, or at least to scale and become a better team fighter. Also, wasn't Canon somewhat of a handshake historically between Aatrox? I think I will need to verify this. I think I have to. Or I'm basically obliged to do it. So let me create a copy of the card. Canon match history. Open this query. Primary 200. Top point, just to be sure. Wait, there's a query for champion versus, but I think it isn't working. I might need to check myself, but I think it wasn't working. Unless I'm wrong. Maybe it works here in this case. Because I remember trying to do it versus, in case of Lucian, trying to compare Lucian Nami versus other champions one day. Versus other bot lane combinations, but there was no avail. Actually, let me check again. It wasn't the most popular matchup for Canon. Maybe it was more in Season 9. Look at the games for top lane Canon versus Aatrox in Season 9 alone. A little less of them in spring, but in summer, a good chunk of them. So historically, Canon was picked quite often into Aatrox, with some decent margin of success. If we were to discuss, it's a pretty solid match. matchup, should I say. Although the summer of 2019 doesn't look as bright. Much more losses. Or should I say many more losses. Same for season 10. But champion wasn't picked nowadays into Aatrox as much. Even recently. Although Evie did win versus Brief in the play-in stage during that BO5 for qualification to the group stage. Still was a more common matchup in play-ins, but quickly dropped out. I suppose the teams pretty quickly realized the champion isn't necessarily for the best into Aatrox, even though historically it could. I guess it's not the case anymore for some reasons. I'm trying to explain. Perhaps maybe the optimization being much weaker, or at least not tailor-made for Canon in terms of winning 1v1 matchups. Because nowadays Canon is mostly a teamfight autobot. He doesn't really go AD builds nowadays. Not really. Nah, was actually mid-tier, I guess. Just to pick quite often, I guess. I guess I was right. Maokai, I think I underestimated the champion a little. Possibly, the champion was mostly picked in the jungle position. So these are the NAR games. So many of them in play-ins. It speaks volume about their meta read of the play-in teams. When they used to play NAR into Aatrox even, but generally not winning the matchup, and then picking NAR as a general blind pick into some of the champions. But the priority dropped later on. This was game 5. So 15 games of top lane Maokai and then 26 of jungle Maokai. So he was played 43 times. So Maokai in the jungle position was overall across the tournament high tier, high pick, band pick. And even there, I can possibly check here. Although he was more played top lane than jungle on the main stage. 30 games to 8. The champion overall, he was still in 70% pick ban, with quite a lot of bans. But also the champion suffered a heavy loss in win rate because, if I remember correctly, people were kind of preaching on Reddit that he was 0-9 or 0-10 when he was playing versus Sylas. And Sylas pretty much dunks on Maokai. I have no idea why teams that drafted Maokai let Sylas through. Perhaps they were, especially from red side, I mean, it's quite a tricky mana. As if you were a blue team, if you were to ban Sylas, maybe it was a bit safer to ban Sylas on blue side, because then you could more safely ban Maokai, pick Maokai should I say, because red side was a bit more obliged with banning champions like Yuumi, Caitlyn, Aatrox, generally so, although there are attempts of countering those champions. And Kate actually lost some of her domination streak towards the end of the tournament, thanks to the playoffs. Oh, it doesn't look like it. She was still banned very often and even won against those Vars Karma matchups. It's my misunderstanding. It might be. But anyways, Maokai was comfortably in mid-tier. Gragas... low. 11 games of top lane. But still decent success as a weak side champion that can push people over, control space. But perhaps, again, the tanks. There are more priority tanks, like Owen Sejuani, even Maokai. And then also, actually I don't know the specifics of the Gragas versus Aatrox matchup, but still think you get quite bullied. There was not even a Gragas versus Aatrox matchup at Worlds. So basically, Gragas used into tank champions to either handshake the lane, or into Renekton, because you can actually be sturdy enough against a champion. So yes, there was no matchup, and I do imagine that the champion loses quite often versus the champion. I need to check it in general. Gragas versus Aatrox. Apply. Quite a losing matchup for him. Next, what's that? Yone. Top lane Yone is comfortably Shandy tier because the champion was basically only picked top lane by Zeus. Now he dumps the fly at the opposition with the pick. It was truly his pocket pick, Yone top lane. And I did have him shown briefly. Can't check it here. Basically, 4 out of 5 Yone games in the main stage were Zeus in top lane, 2 of them into Aatrox. And also a random trophy game into Azir that they won too. So perhaps as a champion low pick ban, but in top lane probably Shanty tier. Silent, I think he was not even picked at all. Maybe actually 1 game of mid lane. Oh, that troll game with Teemo top lane. Oh. So basically the champion was actually not picked at all. I was most of thinking that he would be picked to handshake the line into on tanks. Perhaps the clunkiness of Sion within the drafts and within the gameplay itself, on top of quite a lot of unfavorable matchups, preventing any window for Sion may obscure, or at least not worthy of contention. Even if Sanyo Cho didn't pick him. GP, I think he was right. Let me check. Yep. 6 games. 6 bans. But played by more people. By 3 people actually, by 3 players. Shouldn't need to remove these. A brief impact in Zeus overall in the tournaments. He was not the most picked champion, but still played by quite a few top lanes. 3 out of 16 that played in the main stage, I think. It should be right, yeah. I think there weren't any top lane subs. I don't think Burrow played at all. I might need to check. Main events. Yes, they didn't play Bordeaux. So there were no top lane substitutions. Alright, I was right. Irelia, I think she also didn't see much light of day. Only 2 games that were losses. Both into Aatrox because of the matchup that in theory is favorable for Irelia. But it might be that she is just a bit champion nowadays. That even the favorite matchup into Aatrox, the ZPT zooming that Aatrox cannot handle versus Irelia wasn't enough. On top of other conditions that we can always discuss, or at least that are not hidden are hidden and not visible right away. Vladimir, I think he also wasn't picked at all. Actually, one time. By who? And playing versus Tapoon. Shanty tier. Jax. Actually, I think he was mid. Close to mid pick ban. Also often picked into Aatrox. I think he won that many games because I can look at it. Quite a lot of losses before the latter half of the main stage for the week 2 and playoffs. Seems like it. So still low tier, I guess. I guessed it pretty correctly. Kali, she was overall throughout the tournament barely high pick ban, but she only saw light of day mid lane. So top lane, irrelevant. I think same for Olaf. Okay, he did see one game of, but it was in playing. So Olaf top lane was Shanty tier. I thought the champion was a bit better for pros. Same for Nocturne. He did see play, but only as a jungler, and only one game by Honor. It's because of me having the envisioning of the Nocturne versus Fiora, where Nocturne kit-wise strap counters Fiora, because you can safely engage her to her. You can always press QE, and then even if she tries to parry, you can always spell shield the parry, and then gain additional attack speed. While she's not feared, but she still leaves the trail. Even if you hit her with the Q, even when she uses her Q to run away, you still get quite a lot of movement speed to catch up to her. And then again, you can use E onto her. That even if she tries to parry, you can always use the spell shield and get additional attack speed. And you can also build Bruiser to match her. Next, Mordekaiser. He did see a few games. 2 actually. But they weren't playing, but comfortably low tier pick. Shanty tier. Rumble's actually played 2 times by 2 different European top laners. I checked a little before, and it was Amund and Odoamne. He's not exactly Shanty tier. He wasn't really picked by one player in particular, and all the games of the champion in that specific role were by that one player. It will be a swap between Rumble and Diona top lane. Lilia, also not exactly Shanty tier, because she did see some play in play-ins through other players. She was not played by only one person. By having Hasmet in top lane, so not strictly. Cassiopeia see 0 play, even in mid lane. Kale, same thing. The meta has gone a little too fast now for Kale. I think there was also no Akshan. I need to verify myself. I think there was no Akshan. Yes, there was no action games too. No Quinn, no Cho'Gath. There were a few Malphite games. So now looking back at it, I would put Malphite in. Actually no, still Shanty because it was only San Yocho. Ah yes, that game with Bel'Veth. Bel'Veth. Actually, I forgot. Next, Singed support. The hand, so I would put Singed support in Shanty tier and the support tier list, but no top lane. I mean, perhaps TL could have possibly played one game of Singed into Ornn if there was a possibility for them. Darius, I think he is Shanty tier because of Broken Blade. Zaktop solo play. Impact played Shen top lane, so Shanty tier, rightfully deserved. There was no Shyvana top lane, unfortunately. I think the summer experiment gave a little too much false hope, and then she was pretty quickly dropped. Sorry, Shanty, my OMG top laner. Your pick was unsuccessful outside LPL. Tryndamere saw 0 play, but I can't remember. Actually, yeah, there was one game of Tryndamere by Evie. Yeah. So Shanty tier comfortably. Poppy, she still saw some games in the jungle position. And she was actually generally overall, with including the bans. Sorry. It's been like this for some time now. Where I'm coughing randomly. She, with bans and picks, she's barely mid pick ban, but she only stopped playing in jungle, so out of the top lane matter. I think there were some games of chase. But the chase wasn't picked necessarily by just one player, by two, including Zeus. So perhaps low pick ban. Okay, onto the jungle. What was I with the jungle? I think it should be this tier now. Wait, not yet. I think the... Is this the... Yeah, this is the middle. I think I did place hammer, really? Oh, this is already starting to work. So we can now verify whether I was wrong or right about certain jungle champions. Vi was... Where is Vi? Oh. Close to mid tier. Not really high pick ban, as I imagine it to be. Perhaps for the good, because I thought, because generally she's just not the best champion. Although that could be echo chambering without much thought into it. I guess I'm trying to guess whether I was right with champions. Jarvan was lower. Yeah, below Vi. Same for Nocturne, I thought he would be picked much more. I was also slightly impatient. The Hecarim also wasn't that high. I'm gonna need to find Hecarim. Where is he? Oh, I guess including bans, he's mid tier, but not high pick ban. We had other champions being high pick, like Graves. Although I could, yes, Graves is comfortably pretty high pick in the category. I did not quite expect champion to be that good, but after making the video, I think solo queue was starting to get swarmed by Graves. and people were starting to play it. And so were the pros. And I suppose with other ganking champions or RT champions that can feel the role of a weak side jungler, and what I mean is that they don't really need much economy, they don't need to be played around, they can instead play for the lanes. There was some nerfs, especially to Poppy, because she would now be in low pick ban. The nerfs actually did her justice in her jungle presence. I mean, she was still picked fairly often, but it's nowhere near the presence that she had during summer before 12.16. Maokai, I slightly underestimated him. He should probably be high pick ban in the jungle position. Listen, I guess also mid, so I guess I was right. Wukong, actually where's Wukong? Where's Wukong? Only 4 games, so low tier, low pick ban. I picked Morgana in the make big ban because I was anticipating that she would be a solid answer to the high big ban champions that I proposed, especially since Poppy was nerfed. Let's stipulate that she would be a bit higher because she was practiced by more pros than Morgana. And I don't even think there were even games of Morgana in the jungle. Only in the support position with Caitlyn. So back to being on Kate's leash, being handicapped by the fuzzy cuffs again. Xin Zhao, only 2 games, well, at least by 2 different players. So low pick ban. Sejuani I somewhat underestimated. She was so much more prevalent as a champion. So she would be probably the high pick ban pick. Probably same for Viego, although he was on the gasp of being there. It's more so Maokai and Sejuani across the World Championship. Lilia is only 1 game, so Shanti tier. Trundle, well, almost mid tier. He still did okay. Kindred, I didn't expect her to be played that more than I thought. Although she's still low tier. Actually, no, she was only basically played. Actually, Kindred are they because they consist of the lamp and the wolf. So they were picked basically only by Pioshik, but similarly to Zeus's Ion top lane, Pioshik won all 4 games of Kindred that he played, and even drew bans later on, as a sign of respect, especially in the finals, because he was not being given the champion. After all, Skana, I think there were no games here. No games. Neither of Pantheon. Oh, there was 1 game of Pantheon in jungle actually. Alright, it was by Binjay. So I guess Shanti here. Olaf again was absent. But let me check real quick just to be sure. Not really, but he saw no gameplay in jungle. So out. Diana? I don't remember Diana. Was she even picked at some point? Also no. No. It's actually very peculiar. 109 champions contested overall throughout the worlds, and no Diana pick. Did the nerfs really hurt her? I guess so. Also, perhaps letting that champion maybe it's just not the strongest. There was no Zac and no Shyvana. Shen was top lane. There was no Rumble in jungle. But Veth saw much more play than I expected. Actually, she was picked in 9 games across Worlds. She wasn't the most successful, but she was picked quite often. 6 games in the main event, and then all 3 playing games by Elyoya. So they call on to his shenanigans. And even Blabber tried to build her correctly with the so-proclaimed correct build with Lethal Tempo and Shield Bow. Otherwise, she was more so built as a tank. So Jace and got to turn off. Rek'Sai, no games. Yeah, no games for Rek'Sai. No Sion again. Mordekaiser was only in top lane, no in jungle. Because basically no pro player plays Sion in jungle. Nor does it possibly realize the power that it can provide in each cases. Kayn rightfully Shanty tier because he was picked 2 times by Canyon. And he did pretty nicely on the champion. Kafras, I think it was only played by Levi. I might need to check where Kafras is. 3 games where he was either picked or banned. It was specifically only against Levi. And that game was travesty because people were memeing on the more of Mamontia's bug. But for me, the real reason why, aside from the bug, TS lost that game was because of Jakilov accidentally tanking 2 tower shots before he was hit by Kafra's ult and before the bug happened. So it was all him again. The Zeri incident where he also, in game 5 of the playoffs of LPL in Sama, he also tried to be too heroic. Unfortunate for the guy because he's definitely talented. Fiddlesticks Shanty because he was played by Inspired, and I did correlate the champion with the player. Same for Nidalee, from what I recall. Actually, where's Nidalee? She was picked by more people? Who has picked her? Oh, Kanavi. Okay. This is G2. Excuse me. Come back. Okay. So perhaps slow pick ban because she was not one player's exclusive. Weber saw no play as well, from what I recall. There should be no game, so what about champion was nerfed for pro play. Italia was picked a fair bit, but I think not really in the jungle. I might need to check where she was picked. Yes, only in the mid lane. No Tarek jungle. Essentially, the only famous Tarek jungle player is Light Rocket, and even then, people just something very obscure. Safe album. We can now check mid lane. Why I'm drinking water. Talia, I misjudged her. She was nowhere near high pick ban, more like low. Perhaps mid. Can't say, but LeBlanc. Also not really high pick ban, but comfortably mid pick ban. The most picked mid laner was actually Azir, which I absolutely did not expect. Pros easily adapted to the nerfs. Or perhaps nerfs weren't just strong enough. I mean, the nerfs are still pretty hefty, because they definitely nerf Azir in pretty much all aspects, even late game because of the nerfed AP scaling of his soldier attacks. But pros persevered and still played the champion. Still with solid success, 50-50 across 48 games. Not bad. Ari, the nerf to her charm duration was actually harsher than I anticipated. She still won 5 out of 6 games she was in, but she was nowhere near picked. Silas is easily the contender, was easily high pick ban. Probably the most picked mid laner, and even so games top lane. I actually did not notice, so perhaps in the top lane section. Even Kangan play in top lane. But one time, yeah. So basically Silas was the leader of the mid lane meta. Alongside Azir. Swain didn't really see that much fight of day, but the some games before, so pushed here. Lissandra, similar story. Although she was picked a bit more, but also no pick ban. Oriana, similar story. Akali, I guess right. Perfect. Or even could be pushed to high pick ban if we are really stretching it. She could have been pushed, possibly. Corki, I think he saw virtually not play. Unfortunately, Pros forgot that he's got his spoke build pretty untouched, and then there were innovations like shoot bow and do more mirror mana, and you could possibly still go for Hydra and mirror mana. No Nocturne mini games. Galio, he's also play, actually. Rightfully low tier, but he has picked some games. Vega, he saw no game time. Oops. Similarly for, I mean, Vex probably saw some play. Yes, some games here and there. Zillion, I think there was, okay, there was one game of top lane Zillion, and it was again ADD for Isurus. Vector was of much higher priority than I predicted. Comfortably mid-pick ban. Yes, there was also Victor was often picked into Azir, sort of handshake the line. It was the new Azir Koki for Worlds, but even not just into Azir, he was picked in the myriad of champions. That's not to the biggest avail, but still, A lot of games picked for the champion. Quite a lot. Honestly, it was mostly due to his safety, even though he couldn't pop off as easily. There was no Ornn mid, no Rumble mid, no Cass, no Pantheon. I froze a little because I was trying to think if Anivia was there. Yes, there was one game of Anivia, so Shanty's here for Katsi. Oh, okay. Syndra is actually low pick ban because she was played. She was even picked one game in the support position by Koala from CTBC Flying Oyster. And that same team played Syndra, and then also Showmaker played her once. Actually, she saw 6 games of playtime. Oh, okay, it wasn't Koala, it was Beer from Gigabyte Marines, Gam Esports. Actually, plenty of players, plenty of mid laners got their hands on Syndra mid lane. Between Xiaohu, Katsi, Mission, and Showmaker. Should be moved up. There was no Echo, no Kiana. Soraka saw some play in the support position, but I'll get to that later. Kog'Maw mid lane. No, I don't think there were even AD Kog'Maw games. Unfortunately for the puppy. No Mazaha. Not into LeBlanc even. The champion was jump skill counter with clear win conditions and patterns. No action. There was no mid lane Virus, but Virus was played more than I thought in the bowling position. There was no AP Strani mid, no TF, no Vladimir, no Heimer. Rise, we can all relate to fake ass games from the semi-finals. Actually, there was someone else who played him. Oh, there were 2 games of Rise for both Faker and Chovy. Alright. So, Rise will be moved to low pick ban. ADC, where are you? I think this is the complete tier list. Let me move to where I would drop them for support. I think it's at this point here. Or somewhere here. Draven did not see that much light of day. I mean, he was banned quite often, but the most, and also only 8 games. MF was more like mid-pick ban. And then she still didn't see that many games. She was dropped quite quickly. Although she did pair well with Yuumi, but Yuumi was banned too many times. Tristana, absolutely low pick ban. Perhaps even Shanty's here. I need to look at Tristana. Where is she? Actually 14 games by 8 different players, rightfully of low pick ban, not the obscene number that I predicted for her, because of her doing okay into MF, and possibly even into Draven. Kate was surprisingly high pick ban, the second most banned champion, and so playtime in only 9 games throughout the whole world and only 6 throughout the main event. I actually don't really know why. Perhaps she was more cropping up already buy comp during the Civil Zeri meta. She could push the advantage, but generally those two champions still had gameplay patterns against Caitlyn, like Sivir specialing her traps or Q or ult, and having a way for her to match Kate, and then Zeri being a bit too mobile and also being able to play outside of the choke points that Caitlyn artificially creates with her traps. So being zippy, zappy, especially with some stacks on her ult. Also, I thought she would at least see one game, but nope. The champion got 2 destroyed. Kalista was more high pick ban. Man, I need to check it. Yes, about that threshold. Also, Aphelios either very close to that threshold or already in that threshold high pick. So these 3 should have been swapped with Tristana, MF, and Draven, and then also Tristana should have gone low pick ban. Those were the 3 main ADC picks. Not sure if rightfully so. Perhaps maybe Aphelios, it's a safe champion, but he still has counters that teams can draft to expose. Because Aphelios generally really doesn't like playing into range. Especially when he doesn't have Graviton, because with Graviton at least he can try to set up a pick into ranged champions with Calibre Graviton or Graviton Ultimates. Or even possibly Gale Force into a ranged champion and try to go in with the team to engage. But otherwise, he is poked a lot. And also other matchup dynamics. Kalista, she actually saw more play with enchanters than with dedicated tank supports, akin to 2017, where she was basically perma-picked or banned, also with enchanters. Yeah, there weren't actually that many tank champions to pair her with. Especially, I mean, there was only... Okay, there were scarce instances of Kalista with an engaged support, not necessarily a tank, but champions that do want to go in. Otherwise, she was more so picked with Renata. Maybe she doesn't necessarily go in, but her kit generally pairs very well with Kalista, and then Kalista can always pull her for Renata to engage and then set up the hostile takeover. And there was quite a few games of Kalista Soraka popularized by Trimby. And even Gumayushi played it in the finals. Some different champions like Castle Ash. Ezreal, he was low pick ban. Sivir, similarly. Ash actually saw some games as the ADC. Perhaps not as many as I thought, but generally she started to appear more and more throughout the tournament, and I appreciate it. My small round of applause for pros. Plus, she could have been picked more, especially into Kalista, but anyway, thank you. Unfortunately, no Zex games at all. Unfortunately, no. Lucian apparently was... Let me check his stats. He is very high in mid pick ban and very close to high pick ban. I did not expect... Oh, hey Lino, I was focused too much on talking, I'm sorry. How am I doing? Talking about myself, reacting myself to the predictions that I made prior to Worlds, and then verifying whether I was correct or not in my instances. I was correct so far in some instances, but often wrong. Perhaps my read on the meta was a little weird. Yes, Lee? What do you want? Well, in the meantime, I'm trying to discuss Twitch. I think he's almost no play. Actually, no play at all. Interesting. On top laner ranking for next split in the meantime. I haven't delved that deeply into the preseason item changes. I do want to know that I do play Xante, and I think the champion could possibly see play in pro play because of his disruption, but that is a very specific champion. Actually, I need to check him Xante stat wise if he's risen up quite a bit. He's not the strongest, but not the weakest champion. I will need to delve deeper into the mythic changes because tanks are definitely going to be a bit different, especially since Frostfire Gauntlet is back. There's the new HP stacking item. Actually, I might need to check the new items. VPB. Let me check it. Because there might be. I can diverge a little. Oh, so increase cleanup of numbers. Yeah, hot steel. To do then most damage and then Jackshaw. Tanks are definitely going to be interesting. They will lose wave clear, but they will be a little more tanky. And thus, there's the possibility that anti-tanks could rise. Kind of like right now with its meta, with Aatrox, Camille, Fiora, Gwen. But it remains to be seen. That remains to be seen. Jin actually saw some play. I think it was only one game. I might need to check. 2 games. Okay, so low pick ban, as I rightfully thought. By Hope and Dog down. Okay. Jinx saw a few games. Kaisa. Actually, she saw a bit more games than I thought, and more bans, so she would be moved to mid-tier. I mentioned Zeri again. And Senna. Not the most popular, but she still saw some play. Surfing similarly, albeit she was of high priority, and was played across more roles. I think there were many Nila games, but it's low pick because I remember Gala playing it and then Holy Phoenix. Okay, Phoenix. Vegas did not play, but put him in the Fastista category. Haima saw play, not only with Senna. Actually, I don't think there were any games of Senna Haima. I'm gonna need to check real quick. Yes, there weren't any games of Senna with Haima. But Haima did see play as support, which we'll move on to later. Anivia saw play, but not as a bot laner. Silver Sion or Maokai, Wayne, Zillion. Tamkench, I think he did see some games. Not just, but there weren't any Fasting Senna games. More so it was essentially... let me clean this up. It was essentially with the mobile AD carries, mainly Varus Tamkench. Also speaking of Varus, He is also barely mid-pick. I guess if we were to stretch it out, he should be mid-pick on the bottom end. Because he definitely started to trend as the tournament progressed. We even saw first pick virus, first B1 virus picks during playoffs. So Cho'Gath, no Cass, no Clock. Kathos was jungle. Vayne, I think there weren't any Vayne games, but I need to verify myself. There was one, but in the top lane position. Actually, I did not realize so. Vayne will be in Shanty tier for Hazmat in the top lane position. No Nico, no Samira too. Oh, there was one game. Okay, there was one game of Samira. My holy Phoenix. And then the support tier list. What was it? I think this was it. I predicted Yumi correctly, nice. But Lulu did drop the ball. Where is she? Low pick ban. She was no news prevalent. Same for Soraka. But generally the champions were strong. Renata mid tier, comfortably. So I guess I predicted Yumi being OP. But I thought the meta would be more mixed with engaged champions too, which is why I also put Maokai in mid-pick ban before Worlds. Same for Alistar, the champion didn't really see much play. Actually, he did, but it was more so during the planes, I believe. Basically all the games were in planes. Planes were more engaged heavy on champions. There was more of the meta that I imagined with ADCs and supports, but during the main events it evolved into more ranged champions, which I actually feel glad I did, because generally engaged champions engaged champions are a bit of a mismatch for bottom lane position generally. Perhaps when enchanters are dead, then engaged champions can come in, and then you open up picks from the carry picks from other positions, and also people would generally think they are more fun to watch. Leon also didn't. I think pretty much all. I mean, Amumu is mid. Asta not. Marca is only 2 games of support play. Leona also mid, okay. Nautilus similarly, but again, these are pretty much all from play-ins. In main event, these numbers dropped quite a bit. Where's Leona? Yeah. Main event, favorite engaged supports less. Kama, I think, is also mid. Actually low, but she started to pop off towards the end of the World Championship. Braum also didn't really see much play. Yeah, I thought he would be more picked because of the engaged support meta, but even then he wasn't picked as much. Ashe, low pick and then even less picks in support position. So I'm actually proud of, because I thought Ashe AC was pretty busted because of the attack speed buffs that she got. Obviously she doesn't have the W cooldown like she used to have, but generally I'm glad. Rakan, let me check. Low pick, same for Pike, same for Fresh. Townkench 2, Blitzcrank, I think he saw some games, not too many. Lux, also only basically paired with Caitlyn, same for Morgana. Surfing, I might need to check the support games for Surfing, but those support games are probably with Senna, I think, yeah. It should be that. And versus Yumi also. Nasus so virtually not play, unfortunately. But also, actually, oh wait, there is one instance. Alright. Ah, that game by Trimby, I forgot about that game. That was not the best spot for Nasus support. For more the details on that why Nasus was not the best choice, I am going to point you out to the LS video on his Highlights and Clips channel, where he performs a 16-minute deep dive on the draft of Game 3 of Rogue versus of that draft of Rogue versus DR of that. It wasn't draft, but I was trying to say this playoff series. It was in a normal match versus DRX of that game versus DRX draft wise. I'll point out to you towards that. And LS is more of a Nasus support virtuoso than most of us will ever be. Gragas, I think, so no support play. Same for Galio. Sona also no games, no bans. Rel did see a few games. Actually 10 with 6 bans. But probably more so players. No Shen support picks, no Trundle support. Singe support was with Senna from Lehend, so Shanty tier adequate. Bard saw some play. I'm not sure if it was Shanty tier. Oh, there was actually someone else who played Bard. Ah, yes, Vulcan. I forgot about Vulcan's Bard. Because I was remembering Burrow's Bard because it was more recent, but I forgot that Vulcan also played Bard. I forgot. So he'll be low pick ban. No Nico support. Touche for Carrier. There were also no Jarvan support games. No Poppy, no Tarek. Actually, there was one game of Tarek, probably Cluster Tarek. And Zillion wasn't picked support again. Playing Cluster Tarek from EG. Alright. So, I suppose that I was somewhat correct on the meta predictions. I think I was correct the most on the top lane meta. And maybe somewhat on the mid lane meta. Because I did think that some of the picks, like Silencing, would be picked fairly often, but I wouldn't think they would be picked this astronomically. I thought that clearly enough only wouldn't hurt her that much in terms of priority. And that pros would be foolish enough to pick more of LeBlanc. Glad they didn't. That was my prediction. Alright. I'll be back in shortly to discuss the possible reasons why drafting is not that easy. Okay, I'm back. So what was I trying to discuss why drafting is not that easy. I think for that I will use the pick band tool. Either that or pro comps, but I think it's better to have more freedom in manipulating the explaining the picks without using the application. I do personally have, mind you. But drafting is definitely not easy because it definitely takes a certain amount of practice and openness to creativity. What I like to think of the reasons why drafting is not that easy, and subsequently why pro teams somewhat simplify it, is that because of the lack of proper understanding of the drafting process most of the time, because some of the drafts are definitely impressive from some teams like the Monkia. Lions was often praised for the drafting, especially in 2021. So I think that most teams, obviously knowing the limitations of the players of the champion pools, and also I want to point out that definitely later on during Woods, some of the drafts from some teams were definitely impressive. There were definitely innovations and adaptations. But back to the point, I think that a good majority of pro teams think of the drafting process as trying to assemble a toolbox. So that might be sorry. For example, there was the explanation that came from the Raw game, that same Nasus game. But I need to go for the maybe this one to pick some bands. Day 7, this one. So even in that specific game, you saw Raw. Let me rename the teams. You even saw that Rook already used R1, R2 for Azir and Kalista, which generally makes them not want to play together because of different habitats that they want to be in. Like Azir wants to be trying to play from the back line, trying to play through areas where he is safe, whereas Kalista wants to go deeper with her teammates, and that's why there are contradictions. But I think pros opt for these awkward champion thematics not just because of champion pool limitations or their perception of the meta, but also because, again, of the analogy of drafting, like they want to assemble a toolbox with all the tools. My thought is about the toolbox with tools for example, building a house, assembling a piece of furniture and such. So, for example, that's why I think they probably are more keen to the drafting openers like Azir and Kalista, because they think they need certain tools to play the game at every angle, instead of trying to sacrifice some of that flexibility for creating a beautiful composition that has synergy, answers enemy champions, has synergy with all the champions, and anticipates possible pivots. So, for example, we can talk about what Azir provides, where he provides a multitude of modes with his solid and decently safe push, escape, which is definitely a luxury for control mages, with his dash. His escape is still a little worse than before the nerfs, but he still has it, and pros can play around that cooldown, or at least adapt to it. Same with the damage nerfs they had on job. And then W cooldown. Majority you can with you with Azir. You can go for 3 more shuffles, even though it's probably not his best playstyle. You can play defensively. You can build more for more poke with Q. You can go for more DPS with items like Nashers, although I prefer that pros would actually go for Little Temple for that regard if they want attack speed. To attack with more with soldiers a bit more, especially since you actually do get increased attack range from soldiers with the Little Temple range increase, from what I recall. He can do a lot of stuff. Same for... You can notice that early game is weaker, and I think the thought process of pros is that, hey, we may lack some early game. We might need some lane to win. And first they, for example, pick Kalista because she can be paired with aggressive champions to press the lane and be somewhat self-sufficient. And while she does fall off, I suppose that pro teams most of the time are alright with this concept because again they're trying to assemble a toolbox, not create a composition. They're trying to have as many possible angles covered with as few picks as possible. I think. Because that's why they probably not only like Azir as a champion overall, but they like that he can do a lot of stuff, and that's why they probably still like to pick him with engage comps, just because he can do the Shurima shuffle stuff. Same for Krista with her flexibility in terms of ult usage, where she can either save an enchanter that can extend her relevancy span, or an engage support to enable their engage. So they have engage covered, although Azir doesn't really want to play engage. He only wants to shuffle people into his team whenever he's very sure that he won't immediately be blown up. He doesn't want to be his team's main engage most of the time. The best where it can work is into choke points, where you then push into, for example, he's flanking here, Shurima shuffling the enemy team to this choke and using the soldiers so that they create an enemy wall that they can pass through without dashes. And then they are not trying to think about whether Azir will feel happy with Kalista or whether Kalista can feel happy with Azir. They're more trying to prioritize player comfort, what players can do, and try to fit in as many niches of the competition as possible without any synergy with each other, and then also without consideration of timings, of whether they are in need of actually trying to push things out, of trying to press delete. They are thinking less of that. We can continue actually with the rest, because then we got Ashheima that basically will bully Kalista at any point of the game, and this is something that people should play more of, should have played more of, into Kalista, because the slow generally makes Kalista unable to attack fast as well, because of her special interaction with movement speed slows and her passive. And also Haima just loves when the teams want to engage onto him. Same for Aatrox, because then he can invites people to his turrets. He can build rallies pretty safely to then slow people and control space even better. And also go for some mana just to be sure that he can play those turrets plays, should I say. And also he's still pretty flexible, albeit not necessarily into Azir, because he can be poked by Azir, at least within the minion waves, because Hamilton possesses one of the longest range abilities in the game from his W, but it requires precise mechanics to fan it out in appropriate manners, and also it doesn't pierce through minions. So perhaps it definitely indicates bot lane Heimerdinger, as I do not think that pros would ever pick jungle Heimerdinger, nor jungle Aatrox and top lane Heimerdinger. Just because Aatrox was just that strong of a champion. Top lane. And there are some deficiencies, at least in port play settings, for Aatrox jungle. And then they went for Rumble, I think, yeah? Rumble. Just like, I'm also somewhat rewinding the video, to be fair, as I'm using that analogy. That game as the example of a toolbox. Methodology that most pro teams utilize for drafting. So again, Rumble, it's independent, makes the game easier to play and pushes the lead, and then also doesn't mind falling off, because at least in thoughts of the pro team, they don't mind Rumble falling off, because they feel that as he uncovers the need for late game damage enough, that they are comfortable with instead using the transition from early to mid to late game with their picks. So Rumble and Kalista for them will be their early mid game picks, then transition to the Azir hyper carry state. But then it puts so much burden on those single champions or champion pairings like here with Kalista Rumble. Because they have to then press delete independently without jungle support, although they did have Javan. But Javan has, and while Javan has lanes to play around, he cannot commit his time to all of them, because otherwise he will also fall behind as a champion. Ignoring Vi and Akali, I remember the web picked. And then Nasus. And then also we can already see the overarching theme with Engage of Kalista Rumble and Javan. But again, pros teams, most of them do not mind it, because they use it as a lever to push through all stages of the game, to have every stage of the game secured, with Javan, Rumble, and Kalista being able to press the leads through early and mid game. Then also using the DPS from Azir, who will start to come more online from mid game onwards with some items, but generally he will be the late game hyper carry of the team. And then use Kalista to and her rent stacks to also secure objective control, and for Rumble. But overall, there's so much stuff that otherwise conceptually counters the team comp. The pressure is on them to win, because now they look at the team comp. Even as he can't really be that much of a safety net, because Akali and Vi can independently dive in, although this is also somewhat of a blunder from DRX due to the overarching theme already being that they want their rogue to engage out of them instead of themselves engaging. They are mostly picking for isolated content matchups in a specific regard, Vi into Javan and Akali into Azir. And then also Nasus not necessarily working, especially against Ashe Heimer, who straight up bully him and will bully Kalista. This is why the toolbox approach shouldn't generally work, because then you have contradicting gameplay patterns between champions if you try to essentially have too many cooks in the kitchen. Like already Azir and Kalista are those cooks, because Azir wants to play safer. He doesn't really want to engage with his streamer shuffle, even though he can. He can, but but requires very specific scenarios, and generally his best mode is playing back and outputting DPS or poking. But Kalista wants to be in the center of the action instead. There's already contradiction there. Pros are okay with those contradictions because they feel the niches. They try to be the ultimate Thanos. They try to make the draft somewhat Thanos-esque. Instead of covering every point of game, every need that they need to have. Like objective control, early game, late game, decent clear, decent gang setup and such. And those conditions can be specifically sometimes met, but with different champions that do not necessarily have to contradict with each other. And even then, there's no team comp that can fulfill all those needs, because champions have the limitations by themselves. If there was a team comp that could both have a good early, good late, split push, engage, disengage, have objective control, thematically counter champions, then those are either extremely low odds into very specific team comps that are generally blunders, or they just don't exist because otherwise that would be too OP and those champions would eventually be banned. So generally, this is why you don't try to fix in as many holes in the sinking ship as possible, because then if you're trying to patch this many holes with contradicting champions, then you create even more holes and the ship will sink faster. It's a bit better to cover less holes but have them holistically work together so that the sink, for example, doesn't sink turned 19 degrees, or at least sinks. I mean, there's also a lot of physics involved, but you want the teacup to be the anchor to the ship that can make it stable. The anchor is not flashy, it doesn't do everything at once. Its main purpose is to keep the ship afloat on water on the coast. But that's why it makes it very good. It serves its definitive purpose. Teacups should be like anchors, not like those band-aids towards sinking ships. And teacups should also consist of champions that, like members of the crew, coordinate with each other instead of being contradictory. Because a crew of the pirates that cannot communicate on the sea will eventually have the ship sink. And this is what the toolbox approach is. Essentially accepting that your ship will sink and that your crew is disjointed. Instead, be like an anchor. Be stable, have the purpose, counter enemy team comes like anchor counters the surface of the sea, the depths of it, by holding on to the sand and making the ship stick afloat. So for example, I was thinking about doing an example draft. Perhaps I can do it. I'm not sure if I want to bring in the viewers, or because also there's the thing that this is all controlled environment. But if you are going to draft low.hg or those other similar sites, then you're essentially limited by time. And I suppose also the pressure of time makes drafting even harder, and that is perhaps why they probably opt more for the toolbox approach, the sinking ship approach, because of the time constraints that the clock that are implemented by the clock, should I say. They are, even when I was doing all this draft, I know that with the time and my limitations of my experiences and imagination, then I can always do poor drafts. that are necessarily the best. And with practice, you can become better and better until eventually these better options become patterns. So for example, instead of I guess in that case we can fix the draft possibly, leaving the B1 Aatrox open. Although I'm not the biggest fan of doing this, because then I am not forced to quickly react and instead I am lost in the thoughts. Or at least we can do a different draft, not necessarily the rogue one, so that we can apply the anchor approach that make it very stable. But also we can remember that there are possible pivots, which is why some champions are more valuable than others, because they can be played in more modes. They are more stable anchors. They are not as specialist as some other champions would be, like Evelyn or Rek'Sai. Which one is actually interesting for me to pick? I still have no idea, to be fair, which one we draft to choose. And also, some drafts aren't necessarily the strongest, because there are obviously some possibilities. For example, the anchor accidentally hitting a rock and not attaching, making the ship stay afloat, which are these odds that, for example, LS talks about with Ace King and Ace Queen, where sometimes those bear drafts still lose due to circumstances that happen within the game, but drafting helps you min-max those chances of winning. Not necessarily make them win 100%, but make them have the highest percentage as possible. I'm trying to think which draft could be useful for me to reshape. I think I can fix Genji versus Demon Kia in game 1 to show the example. Okay, so Graves, Sejuani Kate. Okay. Because the example is with Yuumi, which was considered the most OP champion, and people on Reddit are blaming coaches for leaving her open. Well, the retirement, Aatrox Silas Azir. Okay. So there was Yuumi. And in the original, maybe I can do the duplicates to have the comparison. I think it's a solid method, so that you can compare what happened and how the draft should have gone. Or at least have comparison to what I'm changing. So, as a response to Yuumi, DK went Lucian and Nami. And then, what was that? What was it? Wait. MF, Maokai, Misfortune. They responded to that with Lissandra. Oh, was that Kane game? Oh, okay. It's that Kane game. I think Kane could still make an appearance in the draft, but it was definitely different. And I did not expect Yuumi, but perhaps I definitely want to game against Yuumi as a best case example, just so that I can somewhat show counters. But perhaps maybe the perhaps maybe I should not do the DK versus Genji because it has the intricate Kane. I think I need something more journalistic, like T1 versus Fnatic. Could be okay. Where is it? I need to do 2 screens now. T1 Fnatic. And also use the example with a Western team to show that with proper drafts they could have a slight edge over T1, or at least have a higher chance to win. So Azir, Victor, Renata. Azir, Victor, Renata. Unconstant Genesis DK. Okay. Renata, Azir, Victor. And then red side bands were Kate, Aatrox, Führer. The same here. So that was the B1 Yuumi, and Fnatic responded with Lucian Maokai. I'm doing the revision of the draft to then give you reference to where I'm changing the draft. I'm trying to make it different. Then Sejuani Sivir. Here. Sejuani Sivir. This was before MF Yuumi from Genji popped out. And then Nami. Basically. So what else would they do? The second bands were Jackson Camille, from T1 these were Albi Renekton. I'll let him explain why I'm a little disgusted. Also, Lynn, are you still here? Or no? Akali. Yone. Silas. And then they picked Poppy. And moved Maokai to top lane, I think. Yes, it was top lane. With phase rush. Probably could have been a bit better as a top lane and then Maokai jungle, but anyway. We can now move to Yuumi. So you know that Yuumi is seemingly strong, but also she can get outscaled. Most teams try to beat her down with stuff like Lucian Nami that you can see, or with Tristana Rare, for example. But she generally now can survive a lot of threats. So realistically speaking, she basically almost cannot be engaged on, so the option is to outscale her instead. But instead of doing that, teams were trying to brute force the way to win the lane and try to abuse Yuumi's weaker laning, but as it turns out, Yuumi's laning isn't that strong, so instead of going Lucian Nami like they did here, they could have also, I don't know if Fiora is necessarily the most needed ban. And I definitely wouldn't pick Lucian. So we know that she also has pretty good disengage because her ultimate, her E, and the fact that she cannot be killed. Even Q is alright, but Q is more of a poke tool. And also she can always hop out, attack something, and give the shield to the line. I need to actually check if it works only on champions or also on units other than champions. Oh, and yes, and I mean champion. Alright. So the shield is not the strongest disengage tool because she requires me to actually disattach. But generally, yes. Yuumi can be countered. Sona, for example, is really good because you essentially abuse the free laning from Yuumi while also asking her heart. You are essentially a much better version of her. And even your disengage is comparable to hers because you give your entire team movement speed and then you also still have your ult. So quite comparable in that regard, but you just scale much better. And this was something that was already done in SCS Sprint Split 2, Sprint Split of this year, by C9, coached by LS. But it might be a little too early because, knowing what we know, it might be MF Yuumi, which could bully Sona. So instead, we might opt for, I guess Maokai is an okay option. But Cyrus is still open, so I wouldn't advise for the champion. Perhaps going for it yourself, but I don't think so. You essentially need to abuse the fact that she's still only 4 champions moving on the map while Yuumi is attached, and not that. And that when she is attached, she's easier to pick. So I would probably, I think the safe, as he is banned. Oh, I forgot. So this is still open, but I guess Fnatic could go for the approach of Seraphine instead. Seraphine can still be flexed between mid and support at this point, while also easily outscaling Yuumi because Seraphine can deal a lot of damage, has a lot of wave clear, and Senna outranges most champions that Yuumi is attached to. Also, both having solid disengage. I think this is a good approach that 103 displayed in the match versus RNG, I think. Was it RNG? That's RNG. In that day, but then they blundered the rest. But anyway, we're trying to a different draft because I know that approach. It was already analyzed previously. No double click mouse. And now, you need to analyze what both of these champions have. Senna has maybe not the best DPS. Senna has okay DPS actually for a mage because her Q cooldown goes pretty low, very low in late stages of game with items, ability haste, and also she is quite a good chunk of attack range from her nodes, dealing bonus damage and attacking from far away. Also providing shielding, having the wave here, and also disengage. While also providing that they do not ever have to interact with Yuumi hosts because they operate on long range. It's not on a less longer range, but it's still very good. If you want to be really spicy, you can go Sona Seraphine, for example, if you want to go for Sona as the true Yuumi counter, and then you have Seraphine who can still be either played as a bot lane carry or alongside Sona or mid lane. But generally, if you see Sona Seraphine, you should relatively assume that they are paired together, so that their bot lane is revealed. Unless you can go, for example, an ADC counter matchup. As again, MF. Actually, Seraphine should prevent the pivot to MF because of the wave of the Seraphine that can Sona. She can wave here and play outside of MF's range. It could be a decent option, although it might be a little bit sketchy versus Sivir Yuumi. But at the same time, what champions would you play versus Sivir Yuumi? While also having the cohesion with the two teammates that you have, with someone Seraphine who can already protect you so hard. Como Sona? Aferio Sona? Jinx Sona? Slight makes flex potential for Sona, but I don't think so. It's obscure. Unfortunately. Try to figure out. Smoke is still also open. I guess there's a multitude of options. That's why I personally prefer more time drafts, because I am pressured to actually think fast. Otherwise I am open to a plethora of options that could happen. Or Lux Seraphine is also solid if you want some more damage. And Seraphine, she can go bot lane and then support in the Lux APC or mid. What can go mid, but Lux mid is something that you generally see, even in normal play. But I'm not suspect teams opting for Lux. I just send a let's go send a Seraphine as the basis. because this is something that pros are the most likeliest to play. It also answers Yumi pretty well as a duo. So then T1 is faced with those two champions that already have good disengage, good range, good wave clear. So there are options, like trying to either overwhelm them, do what they do but better. But also you have to consider that you have Yumi, that she wants to be attached to someone that she bolsters very hard. Especially melee champions. Because they appreciate her, they can use her ultimate the most, at least proactively, and even defensively in some manners. While also benefiting from the stats and the healing, and the Q movement speed slow. That is not the strongest, but ever so slightly helpful to catch up to the opponents. And these are not that many options, but you can definitely attach her to range carries too. So I can notice that also Senna and Seraphine lose to why they do have healing? They are not the longest range champions in the game. And also we need to consider that perhaps Seraphine could be mid lane, as Senna is static by herself. So we can know what. And also we need a pairing that can somewhat match the wave clear, because then we'll be actually pushed by Seraphine with fasting Senna. So definitely need a champion that can be match the range or at range them, which is also one of the good counters to Senna, because she will never ever in 99.99999% of games never have enough souls to outrange to exceed 1400 range with souls, because games don't last that long for Senna to get that many souls that she can outrange even stuff like Ziggs Bomb or Seraph Q or even combo ult. But it's even more obscene as an example. So I'm thinking perhaps Ziggs. He can be okay with Yumi because she then imparts his wave clear, using additional peel with the healing that they can match the sustain, while also having amazing wave clear. If you want an AD champion that has solid wave clear into those but also has good range, you could perhaps opt for Varus. Varus to me is not the worst combination, not necessarily the best, but it's not the worst, as Varus can play from far behind with his wave clearing with his arrow, and essentially always outranging Senna and Seraphine, essentially in the game touched by their disengage abilities. Ezreal is a little less desired in that regard, because while he's the natural attached anchor to Yumi, the wavy concern that I'm feeling against this is concerning for me, because Ezreal possesses absolutely no wave clear. Yes, Seraphine doesn't have the strongest wave clear ever, but it's good enough that most Yumi lanes would not be able to match Seraphine in the wave clear department, which is why I think if you want wave clear, you have to go for a long range mage who can survive the onslaught of them, like either Xerath, Yumi, because Yumi can actually set up the burst combo for Xerath with her ultimate and even the slow, while Xerath can also do his own, and if he ever lands E, he can set up a chain of CC. The slight downside is that he is less mobile while channeling his abilities, so he might be able to most stable to CC from Seraphine. But the CC chain potential is there. Same with Ziggs. But if you really want an AD champion, it's probably what pros would do. So accounting for what pros will do. And then there is also T1, because obviously you do need to remember that you have players who can play only ever so many champions. Although in the ideal world you would definitely want your players to play so many more champions than you usually see on official games. Perhaps they do something, try them in scrims, but scrims are a secret playground, so nobody will basically reveal them. Pretty much nobody. So now you notice that you have also chain of CC with Yuumi ult and Varus ult, and that you can be flexible. But in this case, you could go Lethality Varus probably, and as Fnatic you should probably assume that is Lethality Varus into Seraphine, because then your long range poke that exceeds the range of Seraphine and Senna hurts even more, even though they can definitely heal through it. So it is definitely, but I do not have the shortest cooldowns to deal with poke healing. Senna needs stuff to attack so that her cooldown of Q is reduced to provide the healing, but then it's not the strongest. And Seraphine, she still heals only based on percentage of missing HP, which is where Varus wants to use his power W. She can shoot damage though. No, I don't have to use Yuumi now. Jinx Yuumi? Maybe Jinx Yuumi. You're a little more on the clock in terms of attack range, but you can also have decent wave clear with your rockets. While outputting pure AD DPS. And also being able to control chokes. So I think this might be Jinx, Varus, Ziggs or Zeref. I think knowing what we know, Varus is probably the best option in terms of, maybe not the best option, but the best considering what we know from words and what pros will pick. So now you know that you have long range poke with Varus and initiation, and also decent wave clear, but you like DPS. At least he goes full AD, so you are not concerned with lacking AP. So now you definitely want something that can output some DPS, while also accounting for the themes that these champions want. So you generally want to avoid having to play into their range, into their effective gameplay patterns. The strength is team fighting. Wakely is the secondary one from Fasting Senna and Seraphine bot lane, but generally they excel in team fights because they can easily disengage them and turn them around with the Encore, with the Senna route, and even the Dawning Shadow. So generally you want to play through the map and not through fights, because then if you match them outmatch them in the department of playing the map, you can possibly get a more open way to play through dragons that they would definitely love to stack. Still trying to think of different options, but generally I think instead of ADC, it might still be Jinx. Gibberish can't play Jinx. Every pro can because of the sprint meta. This already looks like a Summons for a pick comp, or at least a poke comp with Lethality Varus. The good thing is that AP Varus can easily burst people even through the Senna C, because it's not targeted, and that you will generally not see fasting Senna up for any MR items, nor will you usually see Surfing. Go for those. I think that device is probably the way to go, or Jinx. So let's stick to Varus for now. I think getting overcomplicated. So now you notice that you have a CC chain with Yuumi and Varus to stun a target for long, and then they can easily be busted down. And not necessarily the quickest way with the Titan Varus. I assume that you would want to go against Senna Surfing. It's not playing to their optimal gameplay patterns. But you can definitely pick somebody off. And then you also want to accompany that poke slash pick playstyle slash map control playstyle because of the additional wave clear that you get from Varus arrows. Even more if you actually buy Ravenous Hydra. So you can either go for the toolbox approach, which is finding someone to DPS, but you generally want to be that anchor. So you generally want to have a champion that can feel good playing with Yuumi and Varus, while also being good into Surfing and Senna, while also trying your best to account for the possible pivots. Because what can be the pivots for Senna Surfing? Perhaps a more engaging team that can brawl with Senna and Surfing, or a full disengage comp. But with Varus, you are already trying to say that you don't necessarily want to go engage, so they will try to go for a brawl so that you can't ever enter your objective. So definitely want something that can go with Yuumi, that can play for Varus' poke through it, but also can help you somewhat chew through the brawliness, or at least when the objectives are up, at least help you with, at least have mobility to capture the objectives. Oh wait, this side is still not updated, really. There's still no Bel'Veth. Alright. We'll choose obscure champions for Bel'Veth, if anything. So at this point, you probably, either jungle or mid or top. But probably start with jungle. Because you let's have some tanking, because you notice that these are not the best tank shredders. Surfing can go Leandro Stolman, but Senna generally is not the best against tanks. He doesn't have the raw shredding attack speed, nor even the shredding power that Varus has or Vayne. They can take a tank more comfortably, and there are some options open already. I can already be okay with Yuumi, and also buy space for you. I don't think Sejuani is the best, because while she's definitely strong and flexible, she kind of demands you to have preferably two melee champions, in this case in solo lanes, unless you want Varus mid lane, and then different AC, but at this point the pool would shrink. And also Varus mid is more of a specific answer into the likes of Azir and Victor, not necessarily Akali. Because they can still probably go for it even though it's not the best champion. So either out pushing or having macro pressure. Or at least being able to help your team somewhat push them away. Why not being the brawly champion? No, not Shaco. It's too early for Shaco. And Udyr is banned on 12.18. That would be a good champion to have. To push through. Perhaps you can go for something safe. can create space. Gragas will already be AP. And probably not the best Yumi pairing. Asol? Really? I mean, Fake Up has a myriad of champions, but is Aurelion so one of them? I don't think so. Let's think of Galio, safe champion, because he counters the pivot to a cut early. Not necessarily to Silas, but he can stand his own ground generally. Ivan, maybe, but try to think. Is it really Silas? Because again, you can either go pick or poke. I guess Corki, probably the safest bet. Although with Silas, you'd give them the option to actually poke even further. Or is it the AP Cogmate? Probably not. Probably not, because okay, will usually fare a little better as a blinded champion that can poke. Also having decent wave clear. Not Mazaha because you are already going into the range. Morgana as a picked champion that can also push waves and actually have CC, while also being effects in between mid and jungle, and even top occasionally. Cannot replay Morgana though. And is she the best with Yumi? I mean, she can definitely have solid CC chain, but it requires her to be within range, which we already established we do not necessarily want to be in. Ari could possibly catch them off guard, because the CC range is not necessarily weakest. So either Ari or Koki, probably, knowing what people, of course, actually play. Might be the case. Corki also has the upside Ari of being a poke champion while also having possible engage patterns to coordinate with Yumi ult offensively. I think it might be Corki. So now we recognize that they are already going for poke and have Yumi as the healer, so we know that they cannot brawl really. They can still move Seraphine mid lane. Just in case. I think maybe perhaps we can move Seraphine mid lane instead. But then what else will we pick into Yumi? Sona Seraphine and then have something to chew through instead of health. So we already know that they cannot brawl. And what could be the possible pivot for them? Can they pivot out of poke? Can they build more attack speed for Varus and Koki? And then pick more tanks so that they can do more attack damage lifting? While also not incentivizing much resist much? Or even blitzcrank to catch some of the poke champions of God, but they will usually escape, because Yumi can attach to possibly Varus so that he can escape easily, and Kogi has his escape. I guess blitzcrank could be okay, but I'm thinking still of Sona and flex Seraphine mid lane. There we go. think so too. So now we recognize that they are poking, so we definitely need champions that can do stuff on their own, or at least accompany the poke. And there's plenty of champions who provide disengage. I can ban Maokai. Actually, our champions can be quite weak to Maokai in terms of him giving the abilities to tank. Same time he also has to go in, but also he has impressive disengage, although it's more of a anti-dive. Perhaps Gragas is the better ban, because he can actually push people away and can similarly poke, even as a tank. He can provide the slow. So I think if you're Fnatic in this specific scenario, you'd probably ban Gragas. And then as C1 we recognize that they are trying to death ball. So we definitely need to ban champions that can help in the brawling department. Can also be somewhat of a threat to our poke count, or at least be bricks that we cannot chew through. No, I don't think it's gonna. We cannot range Maokai, and we do not need to play into him. So do Hecarim possibly, because Hecarim does love enchanters. He can safely engage onto us. And also is Broly. I think the pressure of the Broliness that they already have might force a Hecarim ban. So as Fnatic we again ban you can also ban carry champions. Same time, if Kindred, I guess we can play poke / pick. That's for T1, we can ban Kindred next time. But then also need to. So they need another champ. Also, some of those stuff in the food. But also, because of the death balliness, there's the threat of split push. So that the poke champions could instead use their poke to wave kill from very far away and instead open the map for the split pusher. So it could be a possibility for T1 to set up for split push somewhat. Also having some engage, but I'm not sure if Vione is necessarily the best. This case dude naturally wanted to engage into enemy champions. So we do not have the best follow-up in terms of damage. I think Fnatic could ban Fiora. Even Gwen, but that would be so much magic damage already. And Senna can still possibly go for more multis. I suspect Fiora is a pretty good ban, although she's banned already. Saku could be annoying. Still go for split push, but also they could go for catching people off guard, or even see AP Varus. That would be their intent. But they can pretty comfortably save allies from that. could be a champion. And also Yone can synergize with Yumi if they ever need to. Also, probably want to play a tank top lane. Perhaps Yone is fine as a ban. And we probably either Kindred to have to fix their problems with scaling or tank. Sinjwani could engage, but Yumi, when touching to the stun target, can always ult. Shinja? Yes, he can also decently engage while also creating the sphere and being good with enchant as well, also creating the sphere to block some of the poke or damage from any possible all-in from Varus, if there ever is an opportunity. Or Trundle, because Varus is quite simple, but also does put them a bit of a block, and Shinja last interest his expensive. I guess Shin. So now you still want, you can probably go for either jungle or top. But you can see that top lanes are mostly taken off, and then if T1 wanted to pivot away into speed push, perhaps they still can, but it definitely is a bit of a detriment to the already established playstyle. So I can feel a bit more confident in picking tank in the spot in top lane, or pick a jungle just to be sure, but at the same time we don't really need to. Gonna pick jungle unless you want to press the advantage to have a carry jungler. You can't even blind pick it because of what. Perhaps as a denial into some picks. So definitely want to brawl. Have a champion that can benefit from those enchanters. I'm thinking of Bel'Veth, but there's no Bel'Veth, so at least here I can use something as Bel'Veth. Even Fiddlesticks can be quite devastating for the team comp, because they cannot always cover every angle. Would Razak even play Bel'Veth? That's the question. I guess yes. Hero Kindred to also have a DPS threat. At the same time, she's not really that good to go into poke for ultimate. Tron doesn't really outfarm, he's not a farmer. Might be Bel'Veth. Let me pick Kassadin as Bel'Veth because of the Void theme, or as Evelyn, or maybe Master Yi, because nobody will pick Master Yi in pro play as a sign-off for Bel'Veth in terms of playstyle, being a carrier that can also be sticky. So now we definitely see that we cannot brawl, so we definitely need to apply pressure somewhere. Also want disengage to protect our poke teammates, but also had for Yuumi to play around. There's still possible answers. Take. But definitely want to pick a tank to brawl. A benefit. I'm thinking of Cho'Gath. That's probably the best tank in slot. Ornn is also there, but we already established that we do not want to engage. We want to disengage and apply pressure on the map. And I think Cho is probably the best tank at zoning people with his Q. That's very pretty spammable. And then also can silence the enemies. Actually, I need to check the interaction with VEF and silences. I need to check it. I don't think there's anything mentioning, unfortunately. But probably Cho is the best, even though he's also a bit more AP heavy. Same time we can go for the tank. We can go from a jungler that can play with Yuumi. We need to match Bel'Veth now. I think Cho is probably best because he's the control space for our poke champions. Also possibly preventing any possible Sion picks that would definitely be amazing with this team. And then for jungle, I mean it can be even jungle Jugga, but he can match Bel'Veth that easily. So perhaps it could be Kidra Graves. Or Nocturne. I don't want to engage. Neither do we want to with Rengar. It might be also the case that we might have to ultimately switch to the brawling comp. Force Varus to go attack speed. Or is it Cho'Gath jungle still and Camille in the top lane? And create picks, also being a split push threat. And that also prevents any pivots into tanks. That makes this team a bit squishier. And also then we have Jax, that's a slight problem. Because we can snatch Jax ourselves. Or is it Jace to fully commit to poke, but then also we're going to probably lose so many dragons. If we need something that can help us secure some stuff on the map. Because Gerald doesn't prevent the pivot, but can match Sion. no. Yeah. Rice jungle? No. Coffers? To outpace. Because he also doesn't mind being in decent action. Because to extend his lifespan by at least 7 seconds when he dies. Might be Kafka's game, legit. There's no incentive from Cho'Gath to build tank, to build MR into him. Not much from Corki. Maybe Bel'Veth can, but we can also opt for brawliness too. We're not treated to just poke. We just have our anchor built so that we can possibly go poke. Maybe Kafka's. Also having the anchor to Yumi actually, which is pretty good to boost his damage. I don't like this idea. So now you know that Cho'Gath is there, so do you want to handshake top lane to brawl better than them? And they still play for poke, and now have decent brawliness too, also matching pace with Bel'Veth. This probably has to be an engage angle. You probably have to go on, I guess. Because you now have to actually try to actually now put on some of the pressure to actually win against these. Sejuani could also some work in top lane with Bel'Veth. And less telegraphed. While also matching the whip of Cho'Gath. Because now I think you want some pieces to destroy. Also have a lane to play around. Probably might be Sejuani top lane. Might be. In fact, I think it might be top lane Sejuani. So you can see that it's already difficult to create the anchors of the draft without having that much brain creativity and having multiple pivots open at you. But this is me trying to cover some of the angles. Even though, while also being cohesive, even though the poke plan might be countered by Sona. But at the same time, I don't know what else I could possibly pivot, at least for now. At least you get the point that drafting should not be trying to band-aid as many holes in the sinking ship as possible, but instead be the anchor that makes the ship stay afloat on water. So that you want synergistic champions that, even in the ship battle off stand, can do well into the enemy ship, onto the enemy ship, the enemy anchor, the enemy team composition. It should not be static. It should not be like a toolbox. I think you understand. Anyone who watches this will understand what I have meant. I hope so. Anyways, thank you for tuning in for this stream, and thank you for watching the VOD once it will be on my YouTube channel. Peace.